Welcome to Horror Stories. Today's video features truly terrifying tales of RV encounters. Whether you're cruising the USA on an RV road trip or just enjoying a simple, fun family vacation, no one is safe anywhere. Sit back, relax, and immerse yourself in these truly scary stories. When I was a young kid, my family used to embark on lengthy family vacations in our camper van. I have two younger siblings, and our parents would take us on road trips across Canada, exploring wherever the roads led us. My dad firmly believed that cramming all of us kids and my mom into a small space was the epitome of a vacation, though we didn't always agree. Anyway, on to the incident in question. We had just crossed from British Columbia into Alberta when my mom pointed out to my dad that a car had been tailing us for several kilometers. Every time we changed lanes or made a turn, this car would mysteriously appear behind us. Coincidence? Maybe, but it didn't feel like it at the time. Night had descended upon us, and thick fog was blanketing the roadway. Visibility was reduced to almost nothing, and it felt unsafe to continue driving. The unknown vehicle appeared once again in my dad's rearview mirror, prompting him to take action. He decided to pull off at the next gas station, which was about 5 kilometers away. However, the road was narrow, with deep ditches on either side, adding to the tension of the situation. Dad slowed our speed to about 40 kilometers per hour to navigate cautiously through the dense fog. Meanwhile, my mom tried to keep us distracted with card games at our makeshift dining table. Looking back, I'm grateful that my younger siblings were blissfully unaware of the potential danger looming ahead. Suddenly, my dad slammed on the brakes, causing my brothers to scream in fear. Mom yelled that it was the same car again, blocking our path. With no other options, Dad decided to investigate. Despite my mom's pleas for him to stay, Dad, a towering figure at 6'6", 300 pounds, fearlessly stepped outside with a tire iron in hand. As he disappeared into the foggy darkness, we heard a loud bang followed by a flash of light. Mom screamed, and moments later, Dad returned, clutching his bleeding forearm. He had been shot by the unknown assailant in the car. Without hesitation, Dad floored the gas pedal, crashing into the car and forcing it into a ditch. We sped off into the night, racing to the nearest hospital. It turned out that the attacker knew Dad's name, adding to the mystery of the encounter. Dad survived with just a few stitches, but the incident served as a stark reminder to never approach anything unknown and to exercise caution in every situation. This incident occurred near the Washington coast in the late 1980s. My Aunt Sarah and Uncle Mike had recently bought a state-of-the-art camper van and decided to take it for a journey from Portland down to Nevada. They had been driving for about 3 hours near Ocean Shores in Washington when they decided to pull over for a quick coffee break at a rest stop. It was early morning, with the sun just beginning to rise over the horizon as they parked among a few other vehicles at the rest stop. Among them was a solitary old sedan parked towards the back of the lot, but they didn't think much of it at the time. While my aunt headed back to the camper van and settled inside, my uncle went to grab some coffee from the nearby concession stand. As he was at the counter, he heard a piercing scream followed by the sound of his coffee spilling to the ground. In a moment that felt like it was straight out of a suspense movie, he turned around to see the sedan now parked directly in front of their camper van. My aunt's scream alerted him, and he rushed back to the van, but every time he tried to approach, the sedan would rev its engine menacingly, blocking his path. The windows were heavily tinted, making it impossible to see inside. This cat-and-mouse game felt like an eternity, though it was probably only a matter of minutes. Finally realizing the danger, my aunt took matters into her own hands. She got behind the wheel of the camper van and floored it. The van, a bulky behemoth, pushed the sedan aside, allowing my uncle to jump in. They crashed through the grassy embankment and onto the main road, with the sedan hot on their heels. For miles, they were pursued down the freeway, the sedan weaving dangerously through traffic to keep up. Without cell phones to call for help, they felt utterly helpless. The situation escalated when the sedan rammed into the back of their van, forcing my uncle to consider drastic action. He instructed my aunt to buckle up as he prepared to brake check their pursuer. But before he could execute the plan, a patrol car emerged from a hidden spot, lights flashing, and began chasing the sedan. With the immediate threat alleviated, they breathed a sigh of relief as the chase came to an end. Shaken and traumatized by the ordeal, they vowed never to underestimate the importance of safety on the road again. It's a story that has stayed with our family, prompting us to ponder what we would do if faced with such a terrifying situation. Feel free to share your thoughts on how you would react in the comments below. And remember to stay vigilant out there, my friends. In April 2019, a YouTuber named Jason uploaded a video to his channel, Appy Mountain Trekkers, in which he documented his solo overnight trek into the mountains. His channel is dedicated to all things outdoors, and Jason frequently shares videos of his hiking, camping, and survival adventures in the woods. His ascent up the mountain is largely uneventful, and upon reaching the campsite, Jason begins setting up his tent and demonstrates how he builds a fire as the sun begins to set. While waiting for nightfall, he tries his hand at carving a spoon when he reports hearing a peculiar sound emanating from the mountain's peak. However, he dismisses it as possibly a bird or another small animal and proceeds with his preparations for the night. Around 9 p.m., he switches off his camera to retire for the night. However, less than an hour later, he is startled awake by an unfamiliar sound, which he claims he has never encountered before in his life. He describes it as resembling an eerie animal call, yet its distant origin prevents him from identifying its source. "I'm still unsettled. I've never heard anything quite like it. It sounded like a blend of a pig and a monkey." It's unsettling even to acknowledge, and the calls were reminiscent of the way dinosaurs communicate in Jurassic Park. I've never experienced anything like it before. Still shaken by the disturbing awakening, he attempts to return to sleep, but only a few hours later, around 1 a.m., he is roused once more by what he perceives as the sound of something or someone moving around his campsite. Whatever it is, it's nearby. Can you hear that? Whatever they are, it seems like there are 2 or 3 of them. It began on the opposite side of my camp and circled around my perimeter. Then, 2 sets of eyes emerge from the bottom left corner of his camera screen. While many animals have eyes that reflect light at night, given the fiery white hue of the reflection, it is highly probable that wolves or coyotes were observing Jason. Dogs' eyes could also produce a similar white reflection, but considering the late hour of the encounter, it is improbable that a domestic dog would be roaming the mountain near his campsite. Attacks on humans by coyotes and wolves are rare, as both species generally avoid human interaction. However, they can become aggressive if they perceive a threat, particularly if they have young nearby. If this were the case, Jason would be in significant danger, yet alarmingly, he appears oblivious to the eyes watching him as he scans the area with his flashlight. Fortunately, he retreats to his tent and manages to sleep soundly through the remainder of the night. Upon waking the next morning, he records another update for his viewers, yet he makes no mention of the eyes captured by his camera the previous night, suggesting that he may have never noticed them. Alright, gather round folks, because I've got a story that'll make your hair stand on end. It's about the time Joseph, Linda, our buddy William and I decided to take a road trip down under in Australia. Now before you start thinking this is some touristy tale, let me tell you, this was no ordinary adventure. So, there we were, cruising down this rugged road in our rented RV somewhere in the wilds of Victoria. The landscape was breathtaking, sure, but the road? It was like something out of a survival show. Twisty turns, steep cliffs, you name it. But hey, we were up for the challenge, or so we thought. We were running low on supplies, so we pulled over at this makeshift camping spot we found on the map. It was secluded, surrounded by dense bushland, but it seemed perfect for a pit stop. We set up camp, cracked open a couple of cold ones, and settled in for the night. Now, this is where things took a turn for the worse. In the dead of night, we were woken up by these eerie sounds coming from the bush. At first, we brushed it off as just some dingoes or kangaroos roaming about. But then, the noises got closer, and that's when we knew something wasn't right. Suddenly, out of nowhere, we were ambushed by these vicious creatures. I'm talking about some real-life nightmares, mate. Huge feral beasts with eyes that glowed in the dark. They were relentless, tearing through our camp like it was nothing. We tried to fight them off, but we were outnumbered and outgunned. Poor William took the brunt of the attack, and he was bleeding bad. We managed to scare the creatures off eventually, but by then it was clear we needed help, and fast. We bundled William into the RV and hightailed it to the nearest hospital, praying that he'd make it through. It was touch and go for a while there, but thankfully, the doctors managed to patch him up. As for the rest of us, well, let's just say that trip down under wasn't exactly the adventure we'd signed up for. But hey, we made it out alive, and that's all that matters in the end. So if you ever find yourself cruising down a desolate road in the Aussie Outback, just remember our story. Because out there, in the heart of the bush, you never know what might be lurking in the shadows. I'm not much of a storyteller, but this is something that happened to me that still gives me the shivers just thinking about it. It was last summer, and I decided to take a solo trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Now, I'm no stranger to the outdoors, but this trip turned out to be something straight out of a horror flick. I packed up my old camper van with all the essentials: sleeping bag, emergency blanket, enough food to last me a few days, and set off on my adventure. The drive was smooth, and I was feeling pretty excited to explore some uncharted territory. When I finally reached the park, it was like stepping into another world. The trees were so thick, you couldn't see more than a few feet ahead of you. But I didn't let that bother me. I parked my RV in a little clearing off the road, grabbed my gear, and set out to see what I could find. Now let me tell you, it didn't take long for things to start feeling a bit off. The further I wandered into the woods, the quieter it got. No birds chirping, no rustling in the bushes, just an eerie silence that sent shivers down my spine. But I shrugged it off, thinking it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. As the sun started to set, I figured it was time to head back to the camper van. But when I turned around to retrace my steps, I realized something that made my blood run cold. I was lost. Every tree looked the same, and the trail I thought I'd been following was nowhere to be seen. Panic started to set in as I stumbled through the darkness, trying to find my way back. But the more I walked, the deeper into the woods I seemed to get. It was like the trees were closing in on me, playing tricks with my mind. Hours passed, and exhaustion started to weigh heavily on me. I knew I had to find shelter for the night, so I hunkered down under a big old tree and wrapped myself up in my emergency blanket. But sleep didn't come easy. Every rustle in the bushes had me jumping out of my skin, convinced something was out there watching me. When morning finally came, I mustered up what little courage I had left and set out again. And after what felt like an eternity of wandering through those endless woods, I finally stumbled upon a familiar sight: the road. Relief flooded over me as I stumbled out of those trees and onto the pavement. I didn't waste any time getting back to civilization, leaving those cursed woods behind me for good. Now, some folks might say it was just a case of getting turned around in the woods, but let me tell you, there was something out there in those trees, something that wasn't right, and I ain't never going back to find out what it was.